our government has lived up to all expectations. We have seen the usual acts of incompetence in the past several days that have come to characterize this government. And the focus on frivolous things that demonstrate to the people of this country that the longer they stay in office, the more harm they will do to our country and our economy. So they have been tone deaf on the big issues. The one that is the burning issue in Guyana now, which is the cost of living, the phenomenal rise in cost of living. Some of it because of difficulties in the economy, but a lot of it came about directly because of government's policies. Increased taxation on international trade and on commodities. They put on the VAT on several commodities that were not VATable before, including water and electricity. They have increased the exchange rate for valuation purposes at customs, so that automatically would move the price of imported goods up. Thirdly, they have amended the law empowering the GRA to arbitrarily, in some cases, increase the valuation of goods that people bring in, although they have invoices for those goods. And that has led not just an increased valuation, but an increase in tax payments. These are just a few of the things that have contributed to the rising cost of living. If you add the fees that people have to pay now, additional fees for almost everything, whether you want a birth certificate, a passport, a replacement for any public documents that you used to receive in the past, you have to pay more now. You also, for any license you want to conduct business, you have to pay more for that license, or even for personal use, vehicles, licenses, etc. So if you have I've used this example many times before, if you have a small business, in the past your license, if you are vending using a vehicle, $12,500 per annum you had to pay to do that. Now you have to pay $65,000 per annum. That is how much it has gone up by. And if you look at the increases, they range between 50% to 500% increase on most of the services that people have to seek some government permit to do or to deliver. So the recent one is the gas price. And you know in the past that we had a system where we will adjust the taxes based on the movement up or down of the gas price, so that the tax take remained approximately the same, but the benefit was passed through to people. Now this government, when gas prices tumbled in the international market, and I'm not speaking about refined imports here, gasoline, etc. I'm speaking about the price of crude. In 2014, the world market price for 1 barrel of crude oil was close to $120 per barrel. That's per barrel. It fell as low as $28 in 2015, from $120 to $28. We had argued at that time, with that rapid tumble of the crude prices, that they should pass on the benefits to the Guyanese public. And Guyanese should have seen a huge drop in the fuel prices at the pump and their electricity bill should have dropped significantly, because the biggest cost for generating power in Guyana is fuel, the cost of fuel. So they never did that. They never reduced the prices at the pump significantly, nor did they reduce the price of electricity. So what happened? They raked in large amounts of revenue. That's why we argued that they had collected over $25 billion in GPL alone from this not passing through the benefits to people. Now the crude prices have gone up back to about $70 a barrel, just about $70, $75 a barrel. It hasn't reached the 120s yet. We were struggling with $120 a barrel, gone up to $70 a barrel. So they do have room on the tax side to make the adjustments, significant adjustments to the price at the pump. But they will not do so because the sole purpose of this government is to collect revenue, to take as much as they can from people, not to manage people, give people a chance, because price of fuel has an impact on production as well as cost of living. They don't see that as their responsibility. They see this only as a responsibility to collect more taxes. And by doing this, what they're doing, because Guyana was used as in addition to producing and making money for the state, was used in a regulatory fashion. Because if you lower the price at Guyana, the others had to follow. Now they're keeping the price high at Guyana, so the private companies are raking in large sums of money because they don't have to make adjustments. Guyana was used as in a regulatory sense. So you see, this is what we are seeing now at the pump, and out here the manifestation of this protest, etc., from individuals, is because of the incompetence of the government and their desire to rake in as much money as they can into the treasury and then waste it, frankly speaking, not to see how they will temper cost of living for people. Now, if they don't adjust this, then these prices may go up, the transport costs, because since 2015, the minibus operators been telling me that they now have to buy new tires. They can't buy old tires anymore, so their costs have gone up, and many of the other things that they were getting free of taxes, now they have to pay on. And so the government, through public pressure, must adjust the rate at the pump. They do have a lot of room. They have the fiscal space as well as the tax play to make that adjustment. But of course, they're tone deaf. That's not the big issue. Guess what the big issue is? SOCO seized a laptop, and because they're probing now SPU official in leak probe. So SOCO, I saw a Kaieteur News article, SOCO raided the SPU's office and seized the laptop. Now clearly this demonstrates that SOCO is taking direction from the government of Guyana, that is from ministers and the cabinet, not from the commissioner of police. SOCO's big role now is, guess what? Reportedly, some of that information had to do with the molasses production figures at Enmore. So molasses production figure has become a state secret in Guyana now. It's a state secret, and nobody should know this, and somebody leaked the molasses production figure, and SOCO, the unit that we set up to go after the PPP setup, to support the FIU to go after drug dealers and money launderers is now, apart from its usual job of harassing PPP officials, now it has to raid the SPU office to protect this molasses figure, the big state secret. It's like the nuclear weapons, you know, that we have there, the nuclear molasses weapons that we have in SPU. This is the job that Soku is doing now. How ridiculous it gets. Then Patterson again, Patterson has a ton of worries on his head, so he tries to talk up the usual nonsense. How many times do we have to say to Patterson, 200 Guyanese to be employed under natural gas project? When will this project come on stream? Where will it come on stream? He says the use of natural gas for GPL to generate electricity was deemed feasible, and an East Coast Demerara village has been identified. So this village doesn't have a name. That's a state secret now. An East Coast Demerara village has been identified. State secret again. We can't know the name of this village. For God's sake, Venezuela may find out too about this. And you know, this is it. So he said the site will have 475 acres. So I'm thinking about which East Coast village has 475 acres. And so which one has that there by the seaside particularly? Maybe it's Pradoville. Maybe it's Pradoville. But that's only 15 acres there. So I'm thinking maybe that is what Patterson was thinking about Pradoville. But that only has 15 acres. So where is the 460 other acres coming from? So he says it's going to build an industrial park and everything else. ExxonMobil has made it clear. They have not completed the feasibility study. They now go on to say another 70,000 desktop study is being done. ExxonMobil will start production in 2020. By the time they lay the gas line, the first thing is to produce the gas. The production of gas can't start until 2020. And then you have to lay the pipelines. When I spoke with ExxonMobil, they said even if it was feasible, this was some time back, we're talking about 2022. And he's talking about this like it's happening tomorrow, 200 Guyanese to be employed. They have nothing to do. You remember the infamous statement from Trotman when he said next year, that was end 2016, he said next year we are going to build a 500 million US facility in New Amsterdam, and we will, it would employ thousands of Guyanese. Now, where is this facility? Now they've backed out of that. This is another gaffe. Then I saw the DPI got involved in it. They said to kickstart, some Norwegian group said that they had to sweeten the pot with favorable fiscal terms to kickstart to get ExxonMobil interested. And so they quoted directly, they're so desperate to find anything to defend this atrocious performance in the contract negotiation that they had when they signed here. This is what they said. In order to attract investments from international companies to kickstart their offshore ambitions, frontier countries often need to sweeten the pot with favorable fiscal terms. Ghana has followed this pattern. In retrospect, one can argue that the government has succeeded in generating the activity they were hoping for. Now, this here, ExxonMobil had already found oil. They sweetened the pot after. they found oil. They were here already under the PPP. And by the way, isn't it such a shameless thing that all the things that they criticize the PPP for, they've not done a single major investment. The two new large gold mines, ExxonMobil. Now, oil and gas is their mantra and saving, and they didn't bring the company here. Can they point to now manganese plant? Can they point to a single investment that they brought to Ghana? The answer is no. And these were the shameless people who were criticizing us in the past and saying that we're not doing a good job on the economy. They haven't brought a single investment. They're latching on to these investments that came under the PPP, and they have no prospects of bringing any investment here. But this here is, again, DPP. So the government, not DPP, DPI, it's so a waste of time unit. They're total useless, spending $500 million for wasting time. And just wasting people's time. This is what we got from the government the last week. That is those issues. Then Harman wasn't going to be outdone by Patterson. So Harman said, oh, the flag was frayed. We couldn't hoist a frayed flag. Well, didn't they know that before? You know, when we said that they altered the color of the flag to put the PNC's color, because this is a pattern behavior. Suddenly, they discovered that the flag was frayed. Like at 2:45 in the afternoon, they discovered that, and so they had to stitch it up quickly at the end, you know, the flag was frayed. If the flag was frayed, it's representing the total decay that's taking place. You should have had the flag looked at a month before, 2 months before, fix it, if you know you have a flag raising ceremony. But I suspect that's another lame excuse from Harman. And then the president goes to the health fair, ignores that their total collapse of the drug system, the distribution system, procurement and distribution system, and he calls on people not to abuse alcohol and fast food. But people don't have money to buy a lot of fast food now too. So that's his biggest thing, alcohol and fast food. He should say, I'm going to fix this thing so that when you go to the hospital, you can find your insulin there. And you don't have to, poor people don't have to walk over for basic drugs to the private drugstore to buy it, which is happening repeatedly across this country. Across this country. They told me, well, don't go on too much about that. If I give you the horror stories that I hear every single day about poor people going to the hospitals and the doctors saying, we can't do much. The doctors are throwing up their hands because they don't have the drugs to give to people. That's what he should be dealing with at the fair. So we have a government that is involved in just small issues. Now, on the other hand, what has happened is, I think we have, once I said it before and I'm saying it again, that we have a titular president, and in 3 years under this titular president, we have become the most corrupt government in the Western Hemisphere. And I can say this with every justification. Not to say they have made corruption an institutional endeavor in Guyana, and virulently so. An institutional endeavor. It's almost like there is a mad scramble to accumulate as much as they can before the next general elections. They're throwing caution to the wind. So today, let me just give you a few examples of the many areas. Now, what we have here is like bribe collecting syndicates. You heard about syndicates for the allocation of land. This government, you have several syndicates. They operate in different spheres of activity, and they're all enriching themselves. So the first one has to deal with work permit, racket, and false documents. False documents. Now, you know, we have been for a while now been saying that we are aware that Haitians are trafficked through Guyana. And we're very concerned that this seems to be an endeavor that is supported by the government of Guyana. Supported by the government of Guyana. It's not like normal traffickers who have to hide and take people through the country. The evidence of this, and what caused that impression that it is supported by the government of Guyana, is that often groups are met airside of our airport. You know, our airport has the customs and immigration. Government officials, dedicated government officials, will go to the other side of bypassing customs and immigration and will meet individuals coming in there. Now, people have a right to come and go through the regular process. So we have been saying, where are the numbers? Now, there's another fear that the fake documents, and I'll come to that, could be used to pad the voters list. But I think, in essence, this is a criminal endeavor. So, in 2015, 770 Haitians arrived in Guyana, 136 left, departed. In 2016, 722 arrived, 451 departed. In 2017, 3,515 arrived, 291 departed. In 2018, so far, 1,238 arrived, 85 departed. Now that means in those years, from 2015 to now, some 6,710 Haitians arrived and 1,104 departed. So we have 5,606 who did not go back. Now, Guyanese, we live here, all of us live here, and we know that there's no way that there are nearly 6,000 Haitians living here. I've been hearing about pockets of Haitians who are working here. And if people have information, I urge them to call us about it. But clearly, most of those Haitians have departed. But they have done so illegally. And we believe they're facilitated through Guyana into Suriname, and the authorities in Suriname should be wary of this, and into French Guyana. That there is a big people smuggling racket aided by the government that issues fake passports. We heard that it's $6,000 per passport, and US dollars, not Guyana dollars. Okay, I saw you said cheap, but it's US dollars. So, to pass through Guyana. So, we intend to bring these figures to the attention of the international community because they love to talk about people smuggling. So let's see what they will do with the figures, the UNDP and the embassies and other things. We're going to bring this to their attention, and because we believe it is being smuggled. Now, there's another worry, and that's why we have started to check the registration at the different registration centers. That once people are issued with their documents and they depart Guyana, the passport, the birth certificate to get a passport, that could be used to pad the voters list. So we are checking that too, to see if people are being registered at the different registration centers, because we'd be able to track based on name and other things. But I believe essentially this is a massive corrupt practice. Now, those many who are here, with the Cubans too, you have probably now, for example, arriving in 2017, 44,700 and 37,000 departed. So we gather that it's not just departing Guyana, but some people have to buy work permits. And so they have to pay $1,000 for a work permit now for 6 months. So this is it, $6,000 for the passport and $1,000 for the work permit. So this is one now, a huge racket that they're involved in. This is from information we're getting. People come in here all the time. They're scared for their lives, and that but they come to tell us what's going on, and the figures substantiate a lot of these things. Secondly, the gun license market too. So you have to pay 1.2 million for a shotgun, 600,000 for a 9mm. That's the going rate. That's what we are told. And then if you want a license for a company to start, then it runs you, to a security company, it runs you into millions of dollars. So that's another syndicate operating. And this with the heavy involvement of political people. I'm not talking about ordinary people. Political people are involved in this. That's another racket, another syndicate operating there. Thirdly, the government has rented a ton of properties. And what they have done, they have rented properties at inflated prices, and then two checks. A check is written to the owner, and many of the owners who now have to give someone money back. I know one particular case, minister has to get back some money. So that's another racket now, renting properties at inflated costs and then getting a kickback from the rent. So that people are happy, some of them, to rent their properties because they get a lot of money and they get their properties rented, and then they give a kickback. That's number three. That's a third racket. I'm just telling you this about this criminal enterprise that this government has become. It's a criminal enterprise. 4, the ministers, the partnership with companies. You're not going to see their names on the incorporation document, but if you check their front companies, who are getting the contracts, like solar contracts, some for the procurement of drugs. This is without any tender. Minister call, give it to this company. I saw one of the companies that got a solar contract close to the afternoon, got the one for the land now, land development. This company was doing used car in Canada, was selling used car in the pre-election period. And now this is it. So it's front companies that get for political people now that are getting the contract. Number 5, the syndicates. The syndicates are now, and if you go into land, prime lands in the GGMC are given to political people. So if you look, they could easily find in GGMC, in the 23 years of PPP, how many politicians got a piece of land from a mining block. They could easily find it there. It can't be a secret. But you should check what's happening now, that blocks are given out. And one day we'll wake up and find out that all the lands given to the syndicates are controlled by groups of a particular minister. who goes around a lot, a particular minister, handing out largesse and stuff like that. But that person is controlling a lot of the syndicates and controlling the land, and has rented the person's land. I don't want to use the gender. Rented land owned by that person to several people who are now also doing business with GGMC and who get preferential treatment. It's the whole mining sector, particularly gold mining sector, is in turmoil. Turmoil because of this. All the prime lands are taken out and given to either owned by a particular minister or given to people sympathetic to them. Then I made it clear already, the settling of the cases. There can only be one reason: the multi-billion settling of cases for kickback, when they did not need to settle the cases. In fact, they had other remedies. They don't need that. That's number 6, billions of dollars going there. 7, the procurement laws. Now, I believe everyone had this great expectation that once the Public Procurement Commission was put in place, that we'll see a massive oversight and improvement of public procurement. Now, the PPC is practically useless, and I should not say this publicly, but it's done nothing to inspire confidence. In fact, what we have now is a total Wild West. The NPTAB is mired deep in corruption. They are tampering with the evaluation criteria that go out. The evaluation criteria is set in contravention of our law, the procurement law. They're flouting that law which says it must be the lowest evaluated tender. They're giving multi-billion dollars contract to preferred contractors. Sometimes a person they give the bid to a person who just recently started doing contracts. So you can't claim track record. Their bid is higher than 13 other persons. 13 other persons. They recently started, so you can't say big track record. They evaluated. 13 other persons had lower bid. And the NPTAB, with the complicity of our cabinet, award hundreds of millions of contracts. It's a routine thing. The contractors come here, some of them admit they had to pay. Some said they paid and they haven't gotten the results, and others said they're not paying anything and they will never get anything. And that is a huge, that's one of the worst syndicates in there, that NPTAB now, and the award of contract. That's number 7. Number 8, the fuel smuggling. We are leaking, hemorrhaging billions of dollars of revenue. Billions of dollars of revenue from the fuel smuggling racket that's going on. This government knows all the people who are smuggling the fuel. They've given licenses to many of them. They know people are selling, using their licenses as a cover to smuggle the fuel in. We've seen the experience of them seizing smuggled fuel and then releasing it back, because top PNC officials and top government officials are getting huge kickbacks from this fuel smuggling ring, whilst the country bleeds. That's number 8. I'm just going through the syndicates that are operating. The SPU and the others, we don't know. I heard 16 billion of the money has been released to the government of the 30 billion yet. We don't know where this money is going to be spent. It's a state secret. On what? I would take you a wager that long before this money is spent, and when we do an audit in the post-election period, you would see that billions have been siphoned off here too. You know, and I see they used to talk about drug dealers and everything else. Now, I don't hear much talk about that, because not a single drug dealer has been charged. They haven't said how much money for money laundering even. They haven't said how much money, drug money, they cleaned out the system. In fact, now we have more leakages at our airports. And the government married in a scandal too on this drug dealing. You have ministers building several houses. If a PPP minister was building a single house, there would be huge public scrutiny. One minister is building 4 houses. 4 houses. Where is the public? And it seems as though only the PPP must do this, because I saw TIGI, and I think they're trying. But they obscenely tried to balance what was happening in the past with now. TIGI has an obligation, because one of their members accused us of stealing $28 billion per year through procurement fraud. Gulsaran, who was part of the coalition. And up to now, he has not proven how a cent of that happened. We've asked him to do it publicly. TIGI have written a statement recently. It's so, they tried so much to be balanced that I was confused by the end of the time I read it, who they were condemning. Totally confused, because they're refusing to condemn all of these things. So the PPP obligation only to fight this corruption, not TIGI. Why don't they take the cases to the police? The cases that they said we should take to the police. Why don't they take it if they're the transparency body? Why don't they call out Basil Williams and the others who every day assaults the judiciary? These institutions that are there to protect all of us. An assault. He loses all his cases. He's totally incompetent. And then when he loses, he blames the judges for the shoddy arguments that he makes in court. A non-lawyer could win some of those cases. And so this is what we have now. So I come back to the conclusion, what I started at the beginning. We have a criminal enterprise in Guyana that we call a government. And no doubt that is one of the reasons, because the US and the others must have intelligence about these things, that they, in their last report, they changed it to say that government corruption now, which they didn't say before, is a primary source of money laundering. We've heard about ministers moving money, etc. But of course, none of this would be investigated, because our media, sometimes some in the media, not all, they have no interest in going through these systematically. If you dig deep enough, you will find it. You'll find it. And we alone shouldn't be doing this. Now, there are two other things I want to talk about quickly. I saw Minister Alikok and the pathetic performance he gave before the sectoral committee on natural resources. And I didn't want to address it because my colleagues there dealt extensively with the land titling issue. And they pointed out that the 10.7 million US dollars was earned by the PPP. I saw they said was provided by Norway via the UNDP, was earned through a program that we started, the People's Progressive Party started, that earned Guyana nearly $250 million. They didn't conclude all of it. And would have seen a new program for another $250 million US dollars that this government messed up. They didn't even get the last tranche on the 250. We would have gotten 500 million at least. That we earned it. We earned it, we put it through the UNDP, 10.7 to do land titling. Most of the things that the minister talk about now were things that we started and we are doing. That we were doing. They have not done anything for the land titling. Where is a single absolute grant? So when the minister said, money is not the problem now, it's true. Because we left the money to do it. We left the money to do it. The People's Progressive Party did that. He said now it's a question about time, personnel, and equipment. It's not about that. It is about commitment. Will this government that had a Keith Scott call Amerindian people avaricious and that they must not benefit from the oil proceeds if they get more land, that the government, in a speech in Parliament, that our government and president refuse to condemn or repudiate, withdraw, refuse to do that when asked this. Will they get more land? And if they do, are they going to be excluded from oil and gas revenue, as the minister pointed out? And so when we see this sort of thing, when we see the government fire 1,972 Amerindians, when it says those statements about Amerindian people, when it takes away the gun license, the guns from the people in the upper mass, the government treats indigenous people with enormous disrespect. And I wouldn't say it is a manifestation because that's separate issue. But that is a ridiculous thing to happen in this day and age. This is a child. Children have to have an innocence about them. The moment you take that away from them, you take away their childhood. So what if he wants to come, the kid wanted to go to school and he's proud of it and his parents don't have a problem with it without a shirt in his costume. So what's wrong with that? These schools I don't know if it's just a class thing or a pseudo-intellectual kind of nonsense, that we have in our society. This is a baby. I was told, oh, if he went without shirt, there are pedophiles lurking in the school. The pedophiles, then they should be out of the school before, not even if the child is without shirt. That will trigger them. Pedophiles have no place in our school. This is a baby. This is a little child. And you hear all kinds of explanations, about, and we need to have a national conversation about standards and all of that. Is that the standard? Is that the standard, the most important thing we should have a national conversation about? About when a baby goes to school on a day that they're proud of, Republic Day. No, independence. And I know, sounded like one person that I don't want. Independence Day. And he is proud of it as a Guyanese child. That's part of our culture too. So I don't buy into this nonsense that we hear as explanation and some people trying to justify it. But the disrespect doesn't end there, because that's just one issue. And the constitutional provisions that we put in place, the Constitutional Commission on Indigenous People, the government now is trying to dilute their presence on that commission by increasing the membership of the commission and stacking it with more government people. That's where disrespect is too, because it's taken away people's fundamental rights. What about the promise of the land that they went around and talked about so much? I don't know whose phone is this. And then just so I end this on a lighter note, I've seen some videos of Nagamutu circulating from DPI. yesterday. That's the work of the DPI now. Jagdeo has an obsession with Nagamutu and Ramjatan and the others. And they use clips of how many times I mentioned their names. Well, it's not an obsession, it's a big worry that these parasites are living off of our people and that they're sucking the blood out of our society and then presenting themselves in a fashion that doesn't accord with reality. So I've had cause to point out how many times, and I will do some of it again, Nagamutu, this man who, and somebody sent me a video early in the morning. So I didn't pay too much attention to what he said on the campaign trail. So they sent me a video, and please have a look, the whole of Guyana should have a look at what he said when he was campaigning. He said he never traveled first class, which is a lie. He said he didn't take a salary increase while nurses were, before nurses got their salary, another lie. He said in that short clip, in about 2 minutes, he told about 5 lies. He said he chaired the cabinet most of the time when Chedi Jagan was president. I sat there from 93 in that cabinet. I've never seen Moses Nagamutu chair the cabinet. He's a liar. But the biggest one, he said, I traveled and I never stayed in a hotel, not a 5-star hotel, not a 4-star hotel, not a 3-star hotel. So Nagamutu traveled with me when I was president. I give you one case where we went to Canuan. We were doing the negotiations with Suriname, you know, when the border issue got contentious. So he was there, sitting in the hotel all day long, but he never went to the hotel. He never stayed in a hotel. So in Canuan, which is a nice resort, they built a shed outside the hotel for Nagamutu, a shack, and he was staying there. And he was so principled, he never came into the hotel. He used to defecate in the bush. That is Nagamutu for him. He never stayed in a hotel. So he was right. He never stayed in a single hotel, not a 5-star, nothing. That's where he used to. So this is the kind of people we have, liars. He talks about himself so much that he actually believes it. And then he was saying how much pipeline it could build, all of first-class ticket, etc. But let me ask a couple of questions. What is he doing with the 105 million that is the discretionary fund that he has? Now, this guy had an operation, a heart surgery. We shouldn't begrudge people for that. I heard they spent close to $30 million on it. 30 million. I heard he had 2 security continuously there in the US. And he talks about fat cat and never staying in hotels. When this guy travels first class, he uses the hotel. They have now changed the per diem policy for him and his spouse to unlimited. There's no limit, unlimited. He moved his salary to $1.7 million a month. He bought a 20-something million dollars. Only one of his vehicles cost 20-something million dollars. The renovation at the house he lives in cost nearly 50 million. Amount of 40 million to buy furniture for him. And he talks about modesty, a total lie. And so that is why I have to mention their names. And I mentioned Trotman's name too, because he goes to the parliament and lies totally to the select committee. He says, the border issue was the reason why we had to give up this generous contract with ExxonMobil. I don't want to go back too past week. And then Ramjatan, I mentioned Ramjatan. In fact, this guy is a dodo. You know, who goes to the TV? I'm embarrassed. He goes to the TV and says, Jagdeo telling our supporters, the AFC people, not to come to their bottom house meetings. That's why we're not getting crowd. If his supporters are listening to me not to go to his bottom house meeting, he should be ashamed to talk about that. And then he says, Jagdeo been sending people to picket us when we go to these bottom house meetings and laugh at us. He should be embarrassed to say that sort of thing. But I guess he is in one of his usual states. So that's why, that's the comic relief this afternoon at my press conference for these people. Nobody takes them seriously. Nobody takes them seriously. And all this DPI, PR, etc. is like, you know how I view them, with disdain. They are parasites. They're living the good life. They're sucking the blood out of our people. They have high impressions of themselves in tiny circles, when people out there think that they're useless, utterly useless, incompetent, and corrupt. So I'm available for questioning now.
Mr. Jagdeo, on the gas prices, you mentioned that if you use the formula to control the prices when it fluctuates in the world market. But there are some persons who are contending that if he was able to do that because of the Petro-Caribbean deal, the payments were deferred, so you had that space to control the prices.
That's a misconception of the Petro-Caribbean deal. The Petro-Caribbean deal, when a company imports a fuel through that facility, say Guyal or Esso, they have to pay the full price immediately. All right, so they pay the full price over, then, so they sell it at market rate to recover that price. Then Venezuela makes, so when we have to remit the money to Venezuela now, Venezuela says, you can keep 35% of it at a 0.5% or 1% interest rate, etc. So the full price is being paid by the oil companies, and they charge the consuming public the full price. It has nothing to do with the loan. Just that this is supposed to go to Venezuela is then used. Government of Guyana doesn't have to make the full payment. It gets part of the payment as a loan, which is then placed in a separate account, which was then used. So we have to, every time we get that money, say $100, and they say you can keep $35 as part of the loan agreement. The $35, we have to issue a promissory note to Venezuela to repay the $35 because it's a loan now. That money then gets placed in the central bank, the $35. So when we work out the deal with Venezuela, we export our rice to Venezuela. We got nearly twice the world market price for the rice. We then use the $35 million to pay it to the farmers, and then we cancel the promissory note, so we don't owe Venezuela anymore. That is how it worked. Yes, sure.
You said the government has the fiscal space, but you're calling for a reduction at the pump at a time when gas prices are going up. Can you explain exactly what you mean?
I said the fiscal space, that's been on the Treasury side. They've just said how they have collected some 7-8 billion above their target. So normally, a country looks at, when you look at the fiscal space, if you program a 4% deficit, okay, that means it presupposes a particular, like you getting $100 and your expenditure is, say, $104, all right, just crudely putting it. That's slightly different. That wouldn't give you 4%, but something like, you understand what I mean. Our expenditure for the year would come in a bit lower because of on the implementation. But their revenue projections have now gone up because they've collected nearly $7-8 billion more than what they anticipated. So that means you have fiscal space there. Secondly, you do have the profit margins at GAIL. GAIL should not only be concerned about the profit margin. I pointed out about the regulatory purpose of GAIL. So GAIL sometimes was making 0% on the gasoline. Zero profit on gasoline, kerosene and the other things. And then making, say, 15% return on the gasoline. So we said to them, we don't want you to make profits on the kerosene. Mostly poor people use kerosene. So sell it back at that. I would bet you now that the profit margins for GAIL and the others at the price they're selling at would run in the range of probably maybe 30–40%. And secondly, the government you see it's ad valorem tax. So if you charge 50% of something when it's $100, you get $50. But if the price goes to $200 now, and you charge 50% of that, your tax take is now $100. So by reducing the tax when the price goes up, you're not even affecting the quantum of taxes collected, because it's ad valorem. It's levied as a percentage of. So the bigger the base, the price of the higher the price of the fuel, your taxes would be higher. So that is what we're arguing. If you even adjust the rate downward, you'd still collect the same amount of taxes you're collecting before, because the prices have gone up.
Mr. Jagdeo, you spoke of people smuggling racket, which you said is being by the government. Do you have like a ministry or department that is responsible for this?
Yeah, the place where the ministry that helps with birth certificates and passports, it couldn't be anyone at any other ministry. Yeah, that's a ministry. You have it right. Thank you for informing me about that. Oh, okay. Thanking me for informing me about that. It's a. Yes. Anything else? Thank you. And by the way, okay, there's one thing on this marijuana thing. So let me, because I was just gone to it. I notice now they're arguing that some of them said that the PPP has opportunistically taken this position. I guess people don't, in this country, don't like when you keep your word. They love that APNU promised all these things, some of the same analysts, and they haven't held them accountable for a single promise. For example, the jobs and the reducing taxes and all of the other things, help for sugar, etc. Now, it is true between 1992 and 2015, we did not promise to reduce this, to decriminalize marijuana, or anything of this sort. But in 2015, we went to the nation with our manifesto. And this manifesto is a PPP manifesto. It is a promise to the people of Guyana. It's the first time we made that promise. If you check page 54 of our manifesto, it says review the legalization of the use of marijuana and on the quantities that attract mandatory minimum jail sentences. It's part of our manifesto. As General Secretary of our party, I have a duty to uphold the promise that we went to the people with. This didn't happen yesterday. This was placed in our manifesto before the elections. We campaigned on this. How can we now? Now, what I did as General Secretary, I allowed a conscience vote. So not mandatory, although it's in our manifesto, maybe we should have had a mandatory vote because we made a promise. But I said people have different views on the matter for religious reasons, security reasons. So we will allow a conscience vote. But as General Secretary, I have a duty to fulfill the promise that we made in our manifesto as a party. And so they said we did this recently. Now I want to make it clear. We're not in favor of legalization of marijuana. Many people confuse legalization of marijuana with decriminalization of small quantities. We're not in favor of marijuana to adjust the laws to legalize the production, sale, export of marijuana. Those will remain intact. Those have all the penalties. What we're in favor of, that I said I'll vote for, consistent with our manifesto, is to decriminalize a small quantity where people go in a mandatory way. They're sentenced, once they get caught with it, they're automatically sentenced to, they don't have a discretion. The magistrates, the judges, etc. They don't have a discretion. They have to sentence them to 3 years imprisonment. That's unjust. I argued also that people should not get rid of this scot-free. So that they must have alternative forms of sentencing. So if you're caught with small quantities, you can be sentenced to community work, rehabilitation, etc. That is our position. So because I see a couple of them saying we want to legalize marijuana. We don't want to legalize. We oppose the legalization of marijuana. We're in favor of decriminalizing small quantity. And it didn't happen yesterday. It happened based on a promise. We are fulfilling a promise. We believe when we put promises in here, we must keep them. You check the PNC manifesto and see how many of the promises they have kept.
Just a quick question, Mr. Jagdeo.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the Chronicle carried a story saying some private homeowners contacted Saudi to settle. Do you have any information that this might be true?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Chronicle knows more than I do.
Were you ever contacted?
No, I was not contacted, and I don't intend to settle. That would have been the next question. Right, yes, thank you.